Welcome back to Hot Rod Guy Garage, and this can be another episode on the '68 Dodge Charger, but it's also going to be an episode on upgrading your classic car to having relays for your headlights. So it won't just apply to the Charger or a B-body Mopar from '68 to '70. This will apply to all classic cars, all the way back to your early '30s, all the way up to your '70s to '80s stuff. So let's get into it. So what we're going to start off with, since the Charger has been missing from the channel and I didn't make the last like 3 videos of me working on it, let's just do a little update on the '68 Charger project, and then we'll jump into this headlight stuff. So alright guys, so let's just update on the '68 Charger before we jump into upgrading the headlight system on this car. The owner of this car has been driving it, but it has not been without its own little issues of bringing a car that has sat this amount of time back to life. I had to come in here a little while back and rebuild the whole front suspension in this car. As the rust and stuff is broke loose, everything got super sloppy. I greased everything, it was wore out. So I put upper control arms, lower control arm bushings in it, ball joints, tie rods, idler arm, pitman arm. I have put 3 rebuilt power steering pumps on it from the guy out of Florida that rebuilds this style pump. I put 3 of these on this car, 2 sets of hoses, and 2 separate steering boxes, just to get the power steering to consistently work. And hopefully he actually done his job this time on that pump, or this one last. But other than that, I mean, the car's done well. The old 400 and 727 run and drive fine. It's got great oil pressure. I had put a Dakota Digital dash setup in it, a new dash pad, and I'd come in here and I had repainted some things on the dash. The customer wanted that Charger emblem added over, I added it. He had put some seat covers on here just to make the seats look a little bit better. Until he can get them covered, I had put some new door panels on it, even though it needs some new armrest and bases. I had come in here and I have temporarily patched his floor for him, so don't have all them big giant holes in the floor. But other than that, guys, that's been pretty much it. I got the wipers working, everything inside the car works, blower motor, heater works, turn signals, everything but the horn. Got the wiper stuff fixed up and working. We had the wiper motor restored. It works great. I'm trying to think of what else I haven't covered since the last video. But the car's done real well. The only thing that don't work on the car is the horns, because it does not have any horns. But we have put bunches and bunches of aftermarket replacement parts on this car, and also have replaced them 2 or 3 times for every single thing that we have replaced because of parts quality. If you note, I said I had put 2 steering boxes and 3 power steering pumps on this car. The power steering pump thing is getting a little ridiculous. Like I said, guy out of Florida, he's the only one that I could find in the country that rebuilds this early '67, '68 only pump. They leak. They either leak or they quit having pressure. They break the release spring in them. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's been a constant thing. So other than that, the car has been great. Other than we can't get the headlights to quit flashing on and off, which is what brings us to this point where we're going to add some relays to these headlights. These are a H4 replacement housings in this car, and I'll show you those. And we'll talk about the difference between the old incandescents and these halogen style bulbs. Alright. So, what we got here, these are upgraded. These are glass lenses. These are from Octane Lighting. These are their bolt-in kit right here. But these use a capsule bulb like this right here, a halogen capsule bulb. These draw a little more amperage than your factory headlights for these cars. Most of your 70s and 60s cars use an incandescent headlight bulb. An incandescent headlight bulb is when you get that orange light that's not very bright, but they don't use a whole ton of wattage or amps to run them. When you swap to a halogen or this style bulb right here, you're going to bring the wattages up and the amp draws up, which most of your older stuff has, for better lack of words, they're breakers inside the headlight switch. And what they do, they look like a set of ignition points. And when they get hot, the little breaker, the little contact, it's got a bimetal little tab on it. And what happens, that little bimetal tab gets hot and it breaks the contact to your headlights or your gauge lights, tail lights, brake lights, so on and forth. Some have more than others inside of them. So for illustration purposes, I've got a Fox body headlight switch here. Alright. This is your headlight breaker. When this gets hot, this little point contact will come back like this, and you will lose your headlights. Or it'll get to the point where it's not quite hot enough and they'll sit here and do this, and that's how your headlights start flashing. Now a lot of your 60s cars, they'll have another one right here for your dash lights, tail lights, and brake lights. Will be right here. It'll have another one of these strips in its upper location, and it'll do the same thing. It gets overloaded, it'll open up, and what that does is keep from burning the wiring off of it. So there's a couple ways around this. You could go in here if you know you don't have no wiring problems, and you could jam stuff in here to hold this contact shut. Likewise with the one that's supposed to be here. You could jam something in there, hold that contact shut. But you risk burning your car down doing that, if it makes sense. You could do that, bypass that, and put fuses in your headlight harness. And that would probably be the wisest thing to do. If you remember a while back, I had some problems with these 66 over here. Doing the same thing. I went in there and I just blocked them things off. I knew I didn't have a wiring problem. Cheap, crappy aftermarket headlight switch. And the charger here is no exception to cheap aftermarket crappy headlight switches. You can see it right there. I have put 2 in this car. And in the case of this Mopar, it has vacuum operated headlight doors. Guess what? All the vacuum switches leak horribly, and the headlights flash on and off. So, like I said, that brings us to this video, what this video is about. We are going to install a 30 amp relay on the high beams, and we are going to install a second 30 amp relay on the low beams. So, I'm going to make this easy, especially on you big body Mopar guys. This is your high and low beam wire, your outer headlight. You see you have a purple and 2 red wires right there. And a black wire. The black wire is going to be ground. The purple wire is your low beam signal wire. Your red wire is your high beam signal wire. And on your inside headlight, which would be your high beam, you can see you have 2 red wires here and 2 black wires. One's ground, the other one is the activation wire. So on a 68 through 70B body, your red wire is your high beam, and your purple wire over here is your low beam wire. So we go to our loom here that is missing all this insulation. You can see we have a red and purple wire, a single. The reason why they're doubled up at the connectors, those wires run to the passenger side. So everything is teed off the driver's side. So what we're going to do, we need to hook our relays to these 2 wires, and this will be our activation wire. And most of your classic Ford stuff is green or yellow. Sometimes you get a red wire, depending on what it is. You can always use a test light, guys. Turn your headlights on. Probe the wires, come off back your headlights. You're going to have one that's hot when you got high beams. You're going to have one that's hot when you got low beams. Those are going to be your activation wires for these relays. So let's get into what the wiring's going to entail. So, what I've done here, I have wrote out a chart here. This comes with these all-star relays. And these are the part numbers for the relays and harnesses I'm using. I like to use these because they have a nice quality heavier wire right here. And they also have the option for the 5th pin if you choose to use so. In this case, we're not going to use the center pin. Okay? This is just a secondary power wire. So, terminal 86 is going to go to your old, low, or high beam power wire, which is going to be our red and purple wire. So, what we'll do, we'll cut these wires somewhere in here. Okay? Pole 87 is going to go to your red and purple wire on this side. Remember, we're going to cut these. We're going to use one side for one thing and one side for the other. So, 87 is going to go to the headlight side, whether it's going to be on your high or low beams. Pole 85 is going to be a ground, and this is going to go to your body. Or you can attach it to your negative battery terminal. Okay? 30. This is going to be a 12-volt power supply. And it's always a good idea to fuse this. You can tie this either off the hot side of your battery or on a Ford with a fender mounted solenoid. You're going to put it on the battery side of your solenoid. Or GM, Mopar, and AMC stuff. If you have a horn relay, you can tie it off the hot side of the horn relay. So, pretty simple, guys. I will take a picture of this and drop it right here for about 4 seconds. So, if you guys got any questions. And alternately, guys, you could rewire the headlights and pigtails and put heavier wires onto the headlight side. Really don't want to poke the bear here too much, so we're going to try to do it this way and just add the relays in line, because this isn't about a headlight brightness thing. This is about a headlight overloading the switch thing. So we just got to get it where it quits doing it. So let's get into it. So we're going to start this out, guys. We got our relay opened up over here and our harness. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to find a place where I'm going to mount these relays. And I think I'm going to mount them on the inside of this core support here. Just where they're not out here exposed to road wetness. So what I'm going to do, we got a red and purple wire right here, guys. I'm going to take and I am going to cut these red and purple wires. I'm going to find a spot here. Right there. I want to get them up where I can get them here, where I've got enough sufficient length on each side where I can get them up here and strip and solder these wires together. So the first thing you want to do is strip these wires back, and first thing you'll notice, these are pretty light gauge wires. That is because you had a factory incandescent bulb in these cars. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to strip these wires back. A sufficient amount. I'm going to make sure these wires are separated. Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I know these are our wire colors, but I'm going to go ahead and get my test light out. So, what I do, I've got a power probe here, and this is a older power probe. These are super handy, guys, especially when dealing with an old car, because you can apply power with one side and ground with the other. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to check our wires that are cut. And we don't have no power because the headlights are off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to turn the headlights on. And I'm going to check. As you can see, we have power. It's lit up red right here. We got 12.6 volts on the purple wire and none on the red wire. Remember, our purple wire is our low beam. So I went in here and turned our dimmer switch on to high beam, which is also an aftermarket reproduction switch. And now we have 12.5 volts on the red wire and none on the purple wire. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn our headlights off now, so that's off. So another step, you can even go further if you have a power probe, is we can go in here, we can lower our stand down here so you guys can see. We can apply power to these wires. So I'm going to apply power to the purple wire, and we have low beam. You can see it flash as I apply power. I'm going to take our red wire and I'm going to apply power, and we have high beams. So at this point, I am going to get out my soldering iron and solder. Because we are going to solder these connections to make sure we have a good solid connection that's not going to fall apart. Alternately, guys, if you want to use crimp connectors, make sure you use the ones with the glue and the heat shrink on the ends. I do not like using crimp connectors because I have had many of them fail. So just use what you can use, and you'll just have to deal with it if you have a failure later. So what I'm doing right now, while I'm waiting on our soldering iron to heat up, I'm going ahead and trimming our pigtails to where I'm going to mount my relays. Now, there's a couple different ways you can remove the center pin that we're not going to use right here. You can either cut it off flush like I did, or you can come in here with a small screwdriver and depin it. I just want to show you that you could cut it right there. I am going to depin this one as well as the other one. But what I'm going to do, our trigger wire is going to be a little shorter. Our power wire is going to be a little longer, because our power wire is going to go to the headlights. The trigger one's going to go to that one. So let me get these prepared and I'll be back. And generally, to depin something like this, what you're going to do, you're going to see a slot here on the back side. You're just going to take something like this pick. You'll go down in there and there'll be a little tab. You just kind of push forward, and that little tab is going to be right there. You see it's folded down. That allows that terminal to come out of the connector. Because when it is installed, it's going to look something, let's see if I can get it pushed up. It's going to look something like that right there. That's what locks it in that plastic connector. And if you're going to use heat shrink, guys, right now is the time to go ahead and put it on your wires so you don't forget about it. So, cut these two pieces in half and go ahead and get them on our wires. You want to kind of slide these down the wire because you don't want the heat from the soldering iron to make your heat shrink. So you want to put it on the longest leg of wire that you have to get it as far away from the heat as you possibly can. So what we're going to do, like I told you before, our old power wires are going to go to terminal 86, which is going to be your blue wire on this all-star harness. So like I said, we're going to have one for low beams, we're going to have one for high beams. So I'm going to take and I'm going to twist my wires together right there. I'm coming here with some soldering iron. I'm going to heat our wire up, preferably from the bottom side, a little bit, and then I'll switch to the top side, get a little heat in it. You want the wires hot, guys, because if you don't get your wires hot, you'll have a cold solder joint. I'm by no means the best soldering iron man on the face of the earth. But make sure you get your solder into your connection. You want to make sure you have a good connection. You want to make sure that solder is penetrated all the way around. So we got our low beam harness soldered, or our low beam power soldered, and now we're going to go to our high beam power. Like I said, I'm going to heat these wires a little bit with the iron to make sure they're good and hot. We want to make sure that solder goes all the way through our connection joint. Set our soldering iron to the side. After this cools a few seconds, we'll be able to come in here and look. And if you end up with a little blob, you can take your soldering iron and come back in here and kind of take it off. And then we'll let this sit there for just a couple minutes. We'll slide our heat shrink up. We'll shrink it on there. Then you're going to slide your heat shrink up. We're just going to lightly heat it till it shrinks to the shape of our wire and our solder with no gaps. You gotta be careful about overheating this stuff, guys. It will burn. So we got one side connected. We need to take our pigtails and just kind of tuck them down here so our wires can come out the front of the core support up here. I'll have to reposition you guys for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to repeat this same process that we done on the other side. But you got to make sure that you put your high and low beam on the right pigtail. So this is the pigtail for the purple wire, which is our low beam. We're going to put it on our purple wire right here. Take our soldering iron, we're going to heat our wire for a second or a few. So like I said, we don't want a cold solder joint. Once it sits on there for a few minutes, we can come in here and we let that solder flow down in that wire. All the way around. So I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit, guys, and I'll solder the other wire off camera and I'll get back to hooking up the other connection. Alright, and at this point I need to figure out exactly how I'm mounting my relays. So I'll take one and I'll write an L on it for low beam. And the other one I'm going to write an H on it for high beam. And I'm going to go ahead and get our wires. Because this one's off our purple wire, so this will be our low beam. Go ahead and push our relay in here. You want to make sure these relays fit tight in your pigtails, guys. Because if they don't, I don't know if you've ever seen these pigtails melt. They're caused by heat, and the electrical system is caused by resistance. And resistance is caused by a loose connection most of the time. So, you want to make sure these pigtails fit tight. So, our red signal wires are high beam, our purple one is the low beam. So, I'm just going to figure out a nice place to put these. Such as so, where I can figure out where I'm hooking my hot wires and our ground wires. So we could very easily just go up here to the battery. But we also have a ground wire that comes off the battery right here, right over here to the fender apron. And I'm probably going to run our ground wires to it because it will look cleaner. This is a factory ground location over here that I have already cleaned. So our ground wires are going to be about this long. So I'm going to go ahead and clip those off like so. We'll get those stripped back. A decent amount. I'm going to twist those wires together. I'm going to take one of these crimp ring terminals, guys, and I'm going to remove this plastic. And you can do so by lightly heating it right here. And when you do so, you can pull that plastic right off. And you have a terminal that you can now solder onto your wires. Now, I'm not going to tell you not to crimp this, guys. I would highly encourage a mechanical connection also on the solder. So sometimes you might find it's a little too big when your wires twist together like this. You can open these connectors up slightly. You can locate the seam in them. You can come in here with something like these clippers right here. You can open this terminal up like that right there. You can slide your wires in it, and you can come back here and we can lightly pinch this closed like so, and we can come in here with a crimper and put a strong mechanical crimp onto our wire. And then we can follow this up with a little bit of solder. And when we solder this, we're going to do it the same way we've done our wires. We're going to hold this on there, heat it up for a little while. We're going to come in here and we're just going to test with our solder, because you really want this solder to get down in this terminal. Really want to let it kind of just flow down in there where it needs to go. Especially on a ground terminal like this, I want to make sure this terminal is fully sealed with solder. So I'll make sure I might put a little extra on it, just to form a cap up here at the top. And that's going to keep any corrosion out of this ground terminal. And make sure we have a good strong connection. Now that I figured out the length and where I'm going to put everything, I'm going to hold the relays up here to the core support. I'm going to make a Sharpie mark right here where these relays are tied up against each other. That's going to keep them from wiggling side to side. So I just have my little Sharpie, made two little dots right here. I'll go get a small drill bit and I'll drill those holes. So I just grabbed a couple of sheet metal screws as so, and a appropriate size drill bit. And I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to take our power probe off, get it out of the way, probably flip you guys around a little bit. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drill on my holes, on my little dots I made. So, after you get your holes drilled, I'm just going to take a couple of sheet metal screws right here, guys. I'm going to put one in the high beam, one in the low beam. Right here. And I'm just going to run them down with a little Phillips bit driver to So we get them started right there. And I'm just going to switch to a regular screwdriver and run these things down. I try to keep my holes a little undersized. That way these won't vibrate loose or out. I want them good and tight as I tighten them down. Anytime you're dealing with a screw like this, you want to make sure you keep good contact in the screw itself, or you'll strip the head out of it. So, got our relays mounted there. Got our ground wire here. I'm going to tape our grain wire up with a little black electrical tape to help it blend in a little bit. I'm going to come in here to our body ground. I'll remove the screw for it. I'm going to make sure we have a good clean area. I had previously come in here and sanded this off. So it's a good time, guys, if you're going to do something like that, to use something like this steel camel thread and post. This is an electrically conductive grease, and it will help protect it. You can get this at steelcamel.com. This is real good stuff. It keeps this stuff from corroding, and it won't inhibit the function of the ground itself. And just keeps all that stuff from rusting up. So, just a little smear from that. We're going to drop our screw down through there, and through this, and through our wire off the battery to the chassis. We're going to tighten it down. That's going to be another important thing to note, guys. You'll make sure that when you tighten this stuff up, that it is tight and tightens. You don't want to have any kind of wiggle whatsoever. And alright, what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to run a single wire to the battery, positive battery side. Important things to note: if you're going to take two wires and run them to a single wire, such as this, you need to make sure that your single wire is going to be sufficiently double the size of the two singles. These are 14 gauge. So if you take 14 gauge and split in half, that leaves you with a 7 gauge. We don't have a 7 gauge wire. We have an 8 gauge hot wire. So it's going to be close enough to handle the amperage that can travel through these two wires in a single application. So generally I'll take like 14, I'll split it in half. So, you know, 14 equals 7, 16 would equal 8. So this should be more than sufficient, being an 8 gauge wire, to handle the capacity. By math, it's just a little bit off. But sometimes, guys, close counts in this kind of scenario. And in this case, it absolutely does, because this is what I have. And I know for a fact that this wire, this 8 gauge wire, can surely power these 4 headlights without any issues. So let me get this wire stripped back and I'll be back. So what I like to do when you're connecting two wires to a larger wire, I'll take and split these wires into a Y, like this. And I will take each one of these wires and I'll come in here and I will twist them in like this right here. And then I'll come in here and I will twist them all together here. So this is going to require a little extra heat from your soldering iron to do it this way. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm just going to take my little mini torch right here and I'm going to put a little heat right here in the center until I start seeing the wire insulation start to get a little hot around it. I want to make sure these wires are good and hot. And then I will quickly switch to my soldering iron and I will feed the solder into these wires. like I told you before, you don't want a cold solder joint. So sometimes you have to switch to a torch when you're dealing with big wire. Bigger wires. I'll let that sit there a few seconds. I'll flip it over and make sure our solder's penetrated the backside. So it's hard to get a nice looking solder joint doing this, but you want to make sure that all sides of your wire are fully penetrated and that you have a good solid joint. And on our battery terminal end, I'm going to do the same thing with our ring terminal. I'm just going to get it in here. I'm going to get it pinched down. I'm going to add a mechanical crimp to it, and then we will seal it with solder on the end, like so. We'll make sure that we keep the heat on the wire. Just want to make sure that solder penetrates that wire, and you can tell because you can see it. And you also want to make sure your solder don't penetrate your old paint. So, note to self, or note to you guys, if you got a car with nice paint, don't solder over it. This car, it's got old patina paint. It don't hurt a thing. So we got a good solder connection here, where we can't pull this ring terminal off. Let this stuff cool down. I'm going to take this red wire up from about here all the way to the end, just where it helps it blend. And at this point, I got a red wire run over here, which is our battery wire to our battery terminal. I'm just going to come in here. I'm just going to lightly snug it down, because I still want to be able to, I want him to be able to pull this battery cable off if something bad happens, but I want this connection tight. So there's a fine balance there that you can do so. You can also add a fuse holder, something like this, but you need to make sure it has sufficiently large enough wires to handle the load coming off. Pretty much in this case, guys, the theory here is the factory headlight switch breaker will trip and turn the relay off in case something bad happens. It's such a short run to the battery, I'm not worried about it kind of chafing on the body or rubbing a hole in the wire where it needs a fuse holder. It will be fine. But if you feel you need to add them, make sure they are sufficiently large enough with wire to carry the load that you're trying to put through it. In this case would be approximately 60 amps, because these are 230/40 amp relays. So at least 60 amps worth of wire holding capability. So we got this wired up now. So the next thing we need to do is put some power. Let's turn the headlight switch on and see if we got headlights. So you guys are going to have to feed my eyes here, because I can't see the front and the good at the same time. We should have low beams, and we got low beams, and they are brighter than they were before. Let's see if we have high beams. We do have high beams, and they are also brighter than they were before. And the car's not even running. So let's start this thing up and see if it gets any brighter. Well, now all I gotta do is let this thing sit here and run about 30 minutes and see if the headlights flash on and off. So, at least now we're getting full voltage from the battery straight to the headlights. And I can tell a huge difference. I didn't really show y'all before other than hitting it with the Power Pro. The difference in the headlight brightness. But they're at least 50% brighter even with these aftermarket headlights with the relays added. Well, it's been running for an hour here in the shop. I just put this fan up here just for a little extra caution. Everything's looking good and working good. Running about 185, 190 degrees and about 45 pounds of oil pressure. Yep, I think our headlights are fixed, so let's put it to sleep. He really just needs to give him an electronic conversion, electric motor conversion for his headlights. There's something weird about the headlight pods in it in the vacuum system. I'd smoke tested it several times. Them reproduction switches, they're junk, they leak vacuum. I fixed the first one, and we had warranty that switch out, and since then I just unhooked it so you can just open them manually, because like I said guys, these aftermarket parts are absolute hot garbage. Mopar stuff's apparently not no different than buying Mustang stuff. In fact, I think it might be just a touch worse as far as quality, especially with these switches and locks and things of that nature, like glove box latch. It's a reproduction and sometimes it don't work either. So super high quality stuff. Can't beat NOS. And then you still depend on something to sit on a shelf for like 50 years to 60 years. Yeah guys, that is part of this. So this is where I'm going to leave this video off, guys. Hopefully this helps somebody out with some headlight flashing on off problems, or maybe you just want brighter headlights on your classic car without changing it to an LED. The relay method is a good, solid way to do so. And the wiring that I've done on this car will apply to everything. Just make sure the wires you cut are your hot wire for your low beams and the hot wire for your high beams. It's pretty easy to figure out. Like I said, with a test light, you're just going to have power when you turn on the low beams. You're going to have power when you turn on the high beams. And you just chase it back in the harness till you get to a point where you want to mount your headlight relays. And then you can cut it there and branch off and have a nice clean install. So if you haven't yet guys, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. It does help channels grow. And if you're a subscriber, I greatly appreciate you guys, and I look forward to everybody's comments down below. So until our next video guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you at the next one.